Just testing, making the test, 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 making it sound delightful. That's too much. That's too much. That's too much. Still making it sound good. Still making it sound good. Making it sound good. Okay, that's pretty good. And I'm watching online. I'm hearing sounds. And that's good. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to LitLive. We will get started in just a little while, but I do want to mention something that LitLive has always been pay what you can, which is amazing, and people are so generous. Tonight, we're starting something a little bit different, that if you are able to pay $10, that will also include a beverage from the cafe. No fancy cocktails or anything like that, but like a coffee, tea, a beer, cider, that kind of stuff. So if you're able to pay what you can, and if you're able to do the $10, that will also include a drink. Okay, so we're going to get started really, really soon. But just a reminder that LitLive, we do rely on our entry fees and other things to keep this thing going. And so if you're able to head over to the pay table there to pay what you can as an entry fee, there's also book sales. In fact, actually, two new things tonight. One thing, David Lee here has very generously donated the proceeds from the sale of his novel, Commander Zero. So if you buy Commander Zero, and there are copies available on the book table over here, all of that money goes to us at LitLive to help keep us running. And it's been a tough year financially for us. We're good, but we are always excited when people support us. So thank you again, and we're going to get started in a few minutes. In the meantime, continue to enjoy. What's your band name? The Whatevers, featuring David Lee on bass, the Ghost Variables. And let's give them a round of applause so they can play a couple more songs before we get going. And in a moment, I'm going to introduce, well, she'll introduce herself, but our host for the evening is the winning superstar, Anuja Varghese. All right, carry on.
Is that good? That sounds on. You good to go? Good to go. Okay. Okay. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Anuja Verghese. I'm a Hamilton-based author and your host for tonight, our December LitLive event. So thank you so much for joining us. We always want to thank the Staircase Theatre for having us, the Ontario Arts Council and the Canada Council for the Arts for providing funding for LitLive, and our LitLive committee who put this event together every month on a purely volunteer basis. So thank you so much. As Brent mentioned, but in case anyone missed it, we do run on a pay-what-you-can basis. All your support helps us continue to pay authors to come and share their work with us. We're very grateful for anything you can contribute, and a $10 contribution does get you a beverage tonight. Woohoo! For beverages. I would just like to remind everyone of our LitLive Safer Spaces policy. LitLive strives to be a safe and welcoming space for people of all gender identities, abilities, ages, cultures, and sexualities. With that in mind, discriminatory language or behavior of any kind, in person or online, has no place at our event, and we ask all of you to help us uphold those values tonight. So, we have 4 amazing authors lined up for you. I'll open with our land acknowledgement, and then I can introduce our first reader. LitLive's home is in Hamilton, Ontario, on the ancestral lands of the Mississauga and the Haudenosaunee people in the territory covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize our responsibility to learn about the rich... Hello? The rich... Nope, they don't like that. The rich history of this land, so that we can better understand. Brent, what are you doing? I'm going to blame him. Shall I continue? Okay. Nope. Today? No? Yeah? Tell me. Is that good? Oh. Keep saying nice, small, soft things, he says. Okay. You know what? I'm going to start that one again. Okay. LitLive's home is in Hamilton, Ontario, on the ancestral lands of the Mississauga and Haudenosaunee people in the territory covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize our responsibility to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as settlers, neighbors, and caretakers. Okay, so without further ado, our first reader tonight is Maureen Hines. Maureen's debut book of poetry, Rough Skin, was published by Woolsack and Wynne and won the League of Canadian Poets Gerald Lampert Award for Best First Book of Poetry in 1996. Her other collections include Harm's Way, Marrow Willow, and The Poison Color, which was a finalist for the Pat Lowther Award and the Raymond Schuster Award. Maureen is also a winner of the Petra Kenny Poetry Prize, and her poems have been shortlisted for the CBC Literary Awards, and her work has appeared in several anthologies and literary magazines. Maureen's most recent collection is Take the Compass, out now with McGill Queen's University Press. Welcome, Maureen.
Thanks so much, Anuja, and thanks to everyone who's shown up tonight and all the people in the background who are doing work for this reading series. How is the sound? Is it okay? Speak into the microphone. Okay. Can this also be lowered a bit, or will that mess with the sound too much? Okay. Yeah, just a little bit, because I couldn't see the speakers or the reader. Okay, that's good.
Okay, you can move it over.
Now you can hear me? Yeah. Okay. Sorry for being so fussy. Okay. So, Yeah, so again, my gratitude to you all for coming out tonight and for supporting this wonderful reading series that has been going on for so many years. So I was told ahead of time that the theme tonight is languishing, and I was a bit stumped as to whether I have very many languishing poems. So I took it as a writing exercise to compose a poem about languishing. So it's a little fresh and unedited, but here we go. The Narrows. My task is to address languishing, but oh, languish is not what I'm feeling. It's anguish. Anguish and languish, lovely rhyming words, aren't they? Anguish, from the Latin angustia and the Old French for narrow, as in the narrow Strait of Gibraltar, where ship captains must navigate past its 400-meter high limestone wall. The wall formed from tiny seashells compacted 200 million years ago. That's a lot of languishing. I do long to languish, like Edwardian maidens lying on a daybed, a limp hand resting on my tormented forehead, but fear that would take me closer to death. Oh, I confess to some languishing, nightly slouched in front of the television where the leaching of energy is habitual and serious. But we are also jarred into anguish by the war's daily death count, by the boy who lost his foot and his father in a bombing raid. At all the intensifying floods and fires, we squeeze our lives between those rocky narrows too. So that's my attempt to approach languishing. Thank you. So I'll start with a poem called Before Nightfall. Oh no, I'm starting with a poem called Uncountables. Okay. Uncountables. When the young woman asked me how much, I answered 4. The young woman, a brighter version of myself, but still uncertain around the edges, wanted to know how much sugar, how much rope, how much tenderness, how much money and music and time, how much war. I was surprised that she thought to call on her older self, and why it is only now that her questions are reaching me. And of course, how to answer her. She is asking about uncountable things, and I am answering with a single number. A number for evenness, harmony, solidity, balance, the number of children in our family, the number of seasons and compass points and legs on a chair, as if that will satisfy her. A kind of blindness in the question, a kind of blindness in the answer. And yet. So the next poem is called Before Nightfall. And before nightfall, set out without expectations, without itinerary as you embark on the nameless fragmentary journey before sunset. First you feel the lift, then the chill of planetary relics departiculating into stars and comet dust. You are moving fast now, no longer fused to the magma core. You rise, hover over enormous gray waves, sand rinsed out of your thought gears by the rain. The wet laundry of your emotions flaps dry. Your body lands close to the cliff edge, arms and legs outstretched near the ancestors' graves. The glint of a tombstone's brass turtle is dulled by strong salt winds. Your touch brightens the turtle's head, reawakens the slow helpers, the companions. You re-enter the language of high cliffs. This poem is called Forgiveness. In my hair, I carry the seed blossoms of several Norway maples, each moment beneath their ample shade, a rainfall of futurity and chance. How plentiful their tiny yellow blossoms, how thickly they carpet the flagstone walks, umbrellas, tables, chairs, an overabundant year, say the city arborists. I don't want to malign any tree, but almost daily I mourn the magnolia that sickened and died, its roots girdled, its light and air stolen, its soil poisoned by the leaf fall of the 3 Norway maples who command our tiny front yard. I keep trying to forgive their invasiveness, forgive the city for planting so many of them, but forgiveness is useless for me and for them. I will never harden my body or stretch my limbs far into the sky, never hold a goldfinch in the crook of my elbow or reach my fingers deeply into the earth for residues of groundwater. So we're coming up to solstice, and so I thought I'd read a poem called Solstice Late Afternoon. And this poem includes a reference, a quotation from the poet Bernadette Mayer, who died a year or two ago. Solstice, late afternoon. Is this what my death will feel like? I asked myself as I lay coughing into the darkness, the rasping stronger each night, climbing a rickety, ratcheting ladder up or down into who knows where. I keep all these fears lidded in a small red enamel pot, one of a pair I bought in the friendship store in Chengdu or maybe in Shanghai. In the other, I keep my hopes, good wishes from friends, and 3 tiny tokens of my partner's love. Bernadette says, women love later in a more complicated way. Also tiny are the juniper needles I have brought inside today and put on the windowsill, their berries white dusted and bone hard. From the studio window, I watch shoppers pour up and down the market streets, the sun at its most distant point, but not yet set. Okay, and the next poem is Midwinter Day, which again, we're coming up to. So yeah, coming up to winter solstice, midwinter day. The unconscious likes to hide its intentions, surplus motives and credit cards, its file of inventions and evasions. In the studio, I noticed, but did not remark, upon the gray torso, a dress form so essential to the proper fitting of a garment. How lovely her arms were, how smooth her hands, as if sculpted. I see the new father crouching on the floor, beside him a photo of his newborn. I recall the photo of me in France, standing in the open door of a train about to depart the Gare du Nord. I look happy, but my father on the platform is in tears to see me leave. It is 1985. I am 37 years old. There is no young man about to fire a gun, no one who's grabbed me from behind and is about to choke me. What is the fabric of the veil behind which the unconscious hides? Is it a net curtain with hundreds of sequins, or steel mesh, or plant-based, like a lavender sachet? Oh, those tiny purple buds on every stem. What I love most in the garden is to grip a stalk of rosemary at its base and gently pull my hand up over its pointy tips. Walk around with my hand covering my nose and mouth until the scent fades. The loss of a child in a school shooting never fades. I stand at the studio window, watch a young woman in a red parka, the handle of a huge purse over her arm. She walks alone into a night that will be a minute or two shorter than last night. So this poem is called Kletik at the Blood Wolf Moon. The Blood Wolf Moon happens in January usually, or late December. It'll be in January this year for us. and eclectic is a prayer to a god or a goddess. Oh, my love, when you awoke, sickened and flannel-voiced, snow had sifted heavily into our sleep, meringued the cars and fence posts. Oh, goddess of serenity and euphony, what are your names, that I might beseech you? Booted and down-vested, I strode out to clear a luminous, high-banked pathway to wintry well-being, tears freezing to my cheeks. Tonight, my love, Earth's shadow will swallow the moon and your calamitous cough. This poem that I'm reading, Bus Ticket and Window Seat. At first I was going to call this manuscript Bus Ticket, and when it was a manuscript, call it Bus Ticket and Window Seat, because I like the idea of hinting at a journey. But Take the Compass does that too. Bus ticket and window seat. I am the pages of the household calendar, and you are the colorful images above the grid of days. Oh, that relentless flap of months. Even so, we are grateful for the flapping, wish it to continue effortlessly. I am half-remembered lyrics, and you, the well-rehearsed melody, but our harmony definitely soars. You are the city rabbit that visits our garden, but rarely, and I am the wooden fence she slips through. You are the red-tailed hawk perched on the bank's coat of arms, and I am not prey, but rather admirer on the pavement, looking up and taking your photo against the blue sky. Who is turtle and who gull? Lemon tart and whole grain bread, megaphone, microphone, starfish and hot pink glove lost on a city street, bus ticket and window seat, atlas and road map, whirling pages of every island and ocean in the world. So, next poem is called Constancy of Sleep, which may not be everyone's experience. The constancy of sleep and illness. Asclepius, god of healing and medicine, has lent us his wand, or maybe his walking stick entwined with a snake, as sign for honorable treatment and recovery. Are the snake's eyes open? Asclepius welcomed the ill and injured into his temple, where serpents slithered on the floor among them. While patients slept, Asclepius poured the names and dosages of remedies into their dreams. But what is the emblem for sleep? Perhaps a musical instrument laid on its side, a drum leaning against a wall, or my uncle's penny whistle resting on a chair with a leather cord twined around it. The cord, an emblem of the banished snake and the banished language, the suppressed song. Each morning we shed our dreams as a snake sloughs off its skin, as we hope to shed our maladies and despondencies. The next poem is called Number 5, and it was inspired by a little perfume bottle, this Chanel Number 5 perfume bottle that belonged to my mother. Number 5. Little square bottle, the same age as me. Little square label, pencil-thin brown line of dried perfume within. Just lift the cut glass stopper, release my mother's lost fragrance. In the 50s, no one cared about Coco's Nazi lovers. With the war over, wealth was what people wanted, or at least signs of it, some elegance on the bedroom dresser, something small that said Paris, glamour, a scent that would last for decades. And this poem is called To Ward Off Adversity. To ward off adversity, pull out your art supplies. The garden's about to pop. The forsythia is preparing to open its million four-fingered hands. And yes, there will be raking. But first, you need to slow your mind to present tense. You also need a soft HB pencil and any old paper, your green and yellow pencil crayons, maybe a fine-tipped black ink pen to record this ebullient growth before you hack it all back in some desperate pruning fit. Your perfectly self-sufficient friend is writing you about the perverse friendship of death. Another is weeping her way towards it wordlessly, sans glamour, sans memory, sans sang-froid. You can find so little to say to them, but to ward off adversity, silence will not do. Instead, forsythia and phone calls and your clumsy little drawings. And winter night prayer. If you take the largest chunk of lapis lazuli you can fit into your hands and hold it for many minutes, at least until the stone warms and your hands cool, your spirit will enter a dominion, a stratosphere, or maybe just a landmass of urgent beauty, a rocky terrain of sky and a sunlit lake of the bluest water, bluer than cobalt or international Klein blue. The color's temperature will heal your injuries. It will pitch you towards an impenetrable twilight, as if through a deep synoptic array. And I'll end with a new poem. Started with a new poem, ending with a new poem. So this is Paean, like it's a song of a poem of praise. Praise the praline and the pram. Praise all things sticky and sweet and the infancy of every person on earth. Praise the promise and the low, low price and every prize ever won, whether for a race or a baking contest or your fat cauliflowers. Praise the ribbons. Praise the prairie and its limitless presence in the center of our continent, our minds. No need really to praise the prairie oyster, that potion of egg yolk and Worcestershire sauce prescribed for hangovers. Praise the pansy and the petunia, and do not forget the lavish, luscious peony, the knot of its hard bud and its multifoliate opening, one petal at a time. Always praise papyrus for its progeny, the page. Praise the perennial love of good friends and faithful encouragers. Praise the parapets and people who step out onto them to peer at a sunset or sunrise. Praise the poodles and the world's pets and their loyalty or their peskiness. Praise what is precious but had to be left behind in the flood. Praise passion, praise persistence, praise poetry. You can even praise prose. Thanks very much.
Man, thanks so much, Maureen. I'm honored that you wrote something new for us. That's so lovely. Yeah. So our second reader tonight is Christine Estima. Christine is a playwright, novelist, performer, and freelance writer. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, The Observer, The Walrus, Vice, The Globe and Mail, The Toronto Star, CBC, Chatelaine, and many more. Her work was included in the 2023 Best Canadian Stories Anthology, and she was a shortlisted finalist for the 2023 Lee Smith Novel Prize. Christine's debut short story collection, The Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society, is out now with House of Anansi Press. Welcome, Christine.
All right, I hope we don't have the same kind of microphone things. Everybody can hear me, yeah? Okay, I'm gonna try and speak this way. So I just drove in from Toronto, so it's really a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you again, Anuja, for inviting me. And another round of applause for Maureen. That was beautiful. I absolutely loved that. What a pleasure to listen to you read. Okay, so yeah, my debut book is called The Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society. It's based off of the stories of my family, and it follows one family as they leave the Middle East in the 19th century, settle in Montreal in the early 20th century, and then it follows their descendants all the way through to the 21st century. So it's a short story collection, but each story is told from the viewpoint of one member of that family. And it's mostly the women of that family. And so you kind of can track the women through time. And the ethos of the book really was to kind of explore this idea of not just intergenerational trauma, but also I was really kind of interested with the ideas that, are we just a product of the people who came before us? And are we doomed to make the same mistakes that they did? Or can we be in this constant act of becoming and renewal? And can we forge our own path? And so the book doesn't really seek to answer that question because I don't know. But it's more like it asks the question, it provokes the thought, and kind of takes you on an emotional journey. And the book was actually really concerned with Arab women voices, Arab Canadian women voices. What does it mean to be an Arab woman in modern Canada? What does that look like? And to kind of take preconceived notions 3 times around the dance floor. And just a bit about the title. The Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society, I discovered this title when my Sitto passed. Sitto is the Arabic word for grandmother. And when she passed, I was going through her things, and I found a letter addressed to her from the Syrian Ladies Benevolent Society, and it was dated 1949. And it was a letter that was congratulating her on the safe birth of my mother, and also congratulating her on her successful confinement. And I just thought, this is delightful. And so I just loved this idea that there was a whole Arab women's society in Montreal at that time trying to galvanize the community and doing outreach. And so the book is, yes, officially fiction. My imagination does go quite wild here, but there are some kernels of truth throughout it. So I'm just going to read one story. Because a book especially about Arab women narratives can sometimes be a bit heavy, I wanted to read a story that's a bit more light and bring some levity to the room, so it's kind of more of a fun story. It's a 21st century story. It's called Rue Berry. Rue is just the French word for street, so it just means Berry Street. And a note about the text. So when you go to a museum and you get an audio guide, and they're like, now you're looking at this painting done by this artist. Hold that thought. Hello and welcome to your audio guide to 7173 Rue Berry in Montreal. Today we will guide you through the ground floor apartment where your Lebanese grandparents lived for many years in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s that you've never bothered to visit because you're so wrapped up in your carefree life in Toronto. Today, you'll be able to explore this flat at your leisure. You can pause or rewind each section as you move through the space. To hear more about the Marché Jean Talon just down the street that you haven't set foot in since you were a whiny and insolent prepubescent, press 101. To hear more about St. Nicholas Syrian Orthodox Church around the corner on de Castelnau, the church where your great-grandfather served as original treasurer, the church where you were baptized, and the church you now mock and lampoon in your atheist rants. No, we understand. We love Christopher Hitchens too. Press 201. That's not to say your family has ever been big on religion. Bunch of crooks, churches are. Sure, Sitto and Jiddo celebrated Christmas, but that was only because your great-grandfather was a member of St. Nick's congregation. No one in the family has ever really believed in a god. Just call us Lebanese or Scrooge. Bah, hummus. To get the names and phone numbers of suitable Arab bachelors who live nearby, don't worry, we know their mothers, press 301. Oh, we forgot. Your feminism. We support that. But Habibti, it's always good to have a man around. But what do we know? There's no charge for this audio guide, but you could call us once in a while. You are now facing 7173 Rue Berry. Notice the winding wrought iron staircase curling down the front brickwork, which is a classic Montreal architectural design. You will find this feature across the Plateau, Mile End, Côte de Neige, Saint-Henri, and NDG. Your mother used to sleep in the bedroom under that staircase. All she could see out her window was black iron and spliced sunshine. There are photographs of your mother as a toddler and Sito standing on that staircase. In those pictures, the sidewalk is dirt and gravel. The cars on the street are rounded and smooth. Notice the front door, wood framed with a stained glass window. Do you see the initials HG in the corner? Your Jiddo installed that door with his bare hands. Some things were built to last. Uncle Ali lived on the second floor and would come downstairs every evening and sit with your mother, Sito and Jiddo, and they'd eat crisp cherries and fresh cantaloupe slices from the Marché Jean Talon. The neighbors would sit on the stoop and play gin rummy. No one does that anymore. Do you even know your neighbors? Does the local soda jerk know you by name? Stop fiddling with your smartphone and listen. As you enter the flat, you are greeted by a pleasant, retired Vietnamese man who has renovated most of the interior since he took possession in the 1990s. His hairline is running away from him and he sports a tacky 90s sweater. Be polite. He has lost his wife. Give him the respect he deserves. He only speaks French. Have you kept up with your French? Oh, you have. Impressive. And here we thought you'd become one of those maudits anglophones. Follow him down the long front corridor. Notice the original floorboards and traces of wallpaper that he merely painted over. This is the corridor down which your mother used to roller skate when she was 13. You can still see the wheel marks and the varnish. The door frame and light fixtures in your mother's front bedroom are still there. You can see in this room a curtain demarcating it from the adjoining middle room where Sito and Jiddo used to sleep. This is now a gilt shrine to the Vietnamese man's late wife. What religion do they practice in Vietnam? Oh, don't give us that look. You can put that face right back in the garbage where you found it. The volume on your device appears to be malfunctioning. If you cannot hear the audio, please restart now. Moving along, next you'll find the door leading down to the basement. In the 1940s, this was a trap door gaping through the floorboards. Here, Sito would store her stewed peaches and green tomato ketchup in mason jars. There were loaves of Syrian bread. Stop calling it pita bread. Pita is a Greek word, and this bread originated in Syria. Got it? And containers of laban, salty yogurt. And on special occasions, you might have found kakab halab, milk cakes, and bitlewa. Stop calling it baklava. What did we tell you about the Greeks? Finally, you will find the back room where the Vietnamese man sleeps. This was once the bedroom where your great-grandmother Alzira, whom you lovingly call Sito number 2, slept. Did your mother never teach you the proper Arabic word for great-grandmother? Shameful. Follow the jovial Vietnamese man whose name escapes us at the moment, this old gray mare, she ain't what she used to be, as he shows you the original features of the flat. The built-in pantry that still bears the carved edges and rounded sides indicative of 1940s craftsmanship. See how the light switches were push buttons? Electrical outlets were two-pronged. Most kitchenware was brown-hued, wind-up alarm clocks, typewriters missing the return lever, rotary phones, mason jars full of off-white flour, tea tins with pictures of powdered ladies on them, large silver spoons, tonics in little blue bottles, chlorodyne tablets in hand-painted ivory pillboxes. The original glass cabinet built to fit inside the wall with the floral highlights and gauzed bubbled glass remains. The 40s, man. Your family left this house in the 60s to move to suburban Ville-Saint-Laurent, but man, the 40s. Press 300 to close your eyes and imagine the sounds of your family's young voices in conversation, fighting, crying, kissing bruised knees, tasting sauces. Press 302 to hear the thack, thack, thack of Jiddo's typewriter, the bubbly percolation of Sito's glass General Electric coffee maker, the wooga, wooga, wooga of your mother's skipping rope slapping the walls as she double-dutched. Press 303 to hear the story of how Sito and Jiddo met. They were at a cafe on Rue Bélanger when Jiddo approached Sito sitting in a booth and said, "You, I'm going to sleep with." Sito smacked him fiercely across the face. "What are you doing, you dumb broad? I'm paying you a compliment," he said. And she replied, "Oh, you haven't pressed 303 yet. We'll wait. We know you've heard the story a million times. We just thought, no, you're right. We're rambling. Who even listens to old audio guides anymore anyway? No one even calls us anymore. We might as well crawl into a corner and malfunction. Now stand outside. Stand in the snow and stare at their front porch again. Hold up your monochrome family photos. Hold them up and try to picture a young Sito kissing a young Jido on this porch. Picture your mother, a toddler, learning to walk down the street. To learn more about how to photograph a photograph into a photograph, press 541 before your head explodes from the meta of it all. Press 600 to speak to your Jido. You have pressed 600. Take the number 11 bus up Mount Royal. From up here, the city below is muffled by the trees, the closeness to heaven. The bus lets you off at the south entrance of Mount Royal Cemetery. There are no sidewalks, so you have to walk on the road. The scent of death is everywhere, and gravestones carry an unbearable, unendurable sadness. You haven't visited Jido since you were a little girl. The snow has submerged all the gravestones, damned Montreal blizzards. Notorious they are. You haven't had to endure so many centimeters since the early 1990s when you would toboggan out of your second floor window after a storm. The front doors were blocked by all the fluffy white stuff. Then you moved to Toronto and never came back. As you walk, look for the black stone with Arabic script along the top. It's across the road from the Fireman's Monument. No, you've gone too far. Retrace your steps, turn back. Nope, too far again. You're going to have to clean off some of the stones if you want to find Jido. Look out across the horizon, beyond the mount's edge. See how Montreal prepares to sleep in this violent haze descending from the west? The sky looks like a melted popsicle, and the sun will promptly set. You have to speak to Jido before nightfall, before the gates shut and darkness blinds you. On the corner by a roundabout, do you notice the unusually high snowbank? The plows have dumped all the slush and sleet and snowy detritus on this one corner. You will notice, peeking out from this mass, the tippy top of a black stone. Your eyes do not deceive you. That is Arabic script across the top. You will have to climb up and over this massive pile if you want to find Jido. You're wearing boots and mitts. Come on now, you're a tough Canadian broad, as you're constantly reminding every man who dumps you. Surely you can withstand a little snow. Dive in, Habibti. Oh dear, it's going up to your hips. You'll have to dig them out. As you assume the doggy dig position and hurl snow back and out between your legs, you will slowly reveal the black stone. Dig with all the anger and passion and frustration that has been building up in you for some time. Why did you return to Montreal anyway? Why have you come to visit us after so many years of silence? Did you love someone? Did you lose someone? Maybe it's because sometimes the only way to look forward is to look back, to see how far you've come. We understand, Habibti. That kind of heartbreak can be a real roadblock. But you were always welcome here. Keep digging. There's your great-grandfather, your great-uncles and aunts. The snow slowly gives way, and there is Jido at the bottom, with an engraving so fresh it could have been carved mere hours ago. Keep the photos in your purse. Keep your camera in your back pocket. Keep the images of Sito and Jido embracing on their front porch, alive and full of vigor, in your mind. Time is a construct. Jido is waiting for you on the front porch. Go ahead, you can speak to him. He is listening to you talk about your life, which can be in such shambles sometimes. He nods with knowing eyes. He knows how deep your pain runs. He feels it in his bones. It's a family trait. Colors shift and fade over Montreal. Your toes are ice and your spine tingles with a chill. Atop the mount, tell Jido everything. To hear Jido's response, press pound. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. So we're going to take a quick break. You can refresh your beverage. Check out our book table. As Brent mentioned, we have books from all of our authors. And as Brent mentioned, we're going to have music from, what are we doing here? Oh, okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to have musical stylings of Gary Barwin on sax, David Lee on bass, and Mike Hansen on percussion. David is offering copies of his books Commander Zero for only $10 or by donation, and all proceeds will go to LitLive. So thank you. Come back and join us after 10 minutes. Thank you. My fear for you. Okay. Okay, I think we are ready to get started. We have two more readers for you tonight. Our third reader of the evening is Manahil Bandakwala. Manahil is a writer and visual artist originally from Pakistan and now settled in Canada. In 2021, she was shortlisted for the BP Nicol Chapbook Award, and her debut collection of poetry, titled Monument, was a shortlisted finalist for the 2023 Gerald Lampert Award. In 2023, she was also selected as a Writers' Trust of Canada Rising Star by Shani Mutu. Manahil works as coordinating editor for Arc Poetry magazine and as digital content editor for Cantheus magazine. Her most recent project is a collaborative work with her sister Nimra Bandakwala titled Women Wide Awake: Stories, Sculptures, and Poems from Sindhi Folklore. Welcome, Manahil.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, thank you so much, LitLive, for having me in Hamilton. I've been fortunate to come to LitLive events in the past. Came in from Mississauga, and sometimes it's so much nicer to come here than to make the trek into Toronto. It's a really warm and welcoming community in Hamilton, and I'm excited to be reading here finally. Yeah, as Anuja mentioned, my most recent work that I'll be reading from today is Women Wide Awake. It's a very hybrid collection that includes folk tales, poems, and artwork made from found and foraged materials. It's a project it's part of a project that my sister, who couldn't be here tonight, she and I undertook in 2019. We were interested in exploring folklore from the area where we grew up in, which is the city of Karachi in the province of Sindh in Pakistan. We went there, we interviewed artists, musicians, cultural workers, professors, etc. We visited a lot of historical sites because a lot of the stories are they're very rooted in geography. They're very rooted in the landscape of that area, and yeah, a lot of the stories they have like archaeological sites where stories took place, or grave sites that people still visit today. So they're very significant. They continue to be very significant stories. When we came back, we compiled them into this manuscript that I think we've tried to cover a lot of the folklore from Sindh, but I mean the stories are so vast and so far-reaching that I think any attempt to collect all folklore is by nature impossible. And I'll also add, so when I saw the theme of this night was languishing, like any writer, I Googled what the word, like the dictionary definition of the word meant. And the one that kind of, I think, stuck with me was to exist in an unpleasant or unwanted situation, often for a long time. So the specific stories that I'm going to share are ones that I think touch on that. Yeah, I could go on and just talking about the background and context of the book, but I am also here to share the stories, so I'll stop there. This story is the story of Marvy, and I had mentioned that geography plays a very important role in these stories. This one takes place in two prominent locations. One is Malir, which is a small village in the Tharparkar Desert, and the other is kind of the city of Umarkot, which was sort of the ruling area, the ruling city of that area. Marvy's story is part of the soil that shaped her. She lived in Malir, a village in the Tharparkar Desert. She spent her childhood sliding around on sand dunes and playing hide and seek behind the squat date trees. As she grew older, the desert winds defined her sharp features and the sun's light glowed off her face. A man from her village fell in love with her. She adored him, her family, and the people of her village. Listening to stories at night, watching the constellations shine, there was nowhere else she would rather have been. But the petty jealousy of a boy was about to devastate her life. This boy worked for her father. He made advances towards Marvy, but she wasn't interested. The boy didn't leave it alone there. He didn't take no for an answer. Scorned and hungry for revenge, he went to Umar Sumro, who is the king of Umarkot, and he waxed poetic about Marvy's beauty. He left the king with a suggestion that King Umar make Marvy his queen. That's exactly what Umar did. The next morning, he rode to Malir on his strongest camel. Marvy was crouched over the village well, drawing water, her chadar wrapped around her shoulders, when Umar came along. He grabbed Marvy by the waist and hoisted her up onto his camel. During the entire ride back to Umarkot, he imagined proposing to her and could picture her beautiful face as she lay on his adorned bed. But Marvy struggled against his grip all the way to his fort. She squeezed her eyes shut when he pointed out her village. She turned her face away when he laid jewels down at her feet. He vowed that he would find a way to make her his wife, but she kept refusing. He had money, power, jewels, everything. With her refusal, he kept Marvy in a small room in Umarkot Fort, visiting every day with a new bribe, a new jewel, but still she refused. In that small room, locked up, Marvy turned her back on all the chests of gold jewels that Umar brought her. She didn't wash her hair. Her greasy locks hung around her graying skin. Her coarse chadar frayed at the edges. She threatened to set the room on fire and burn herself inside rather than giving in to him. Years passed. Marvy's chadar was more whole than cloth, but she still hugged this one memory of Malir around her wasted body. She longed for the hot sand of her home, and only this hope kept her alive year after year. One day, without warning, an impatient knock on the door startled her. Umar's servant entered and without explanation informed her that there was a horse outside waiting to take her back to Malir. The servant left the small door of Marvy's prison open. She took a step out, tentatively expecting Umar to jump out from around the wall and throw another diamond at her foot, but no one came. She mounted the horse at the fort entrance and was ready to ride off when the tall, imposing figure of Umar approached. He held up his hands in surrender, and Marvy knew this was no trick. She could finally go home. the story doesn't end happily just there yet. Marvy's village did not welcome her back with the same fervor that she held for it. Having spent so long in Umercote, Marvy's fiancé and her parents did not believe that she had not been tainted. Umar got her into this mess, so Umar had to get her out of it. He offered to face a trial to prove Marvy's chastity. He and Marvy both held their hands to a hot iron rod. When they released the rod, their hands were unscathed, and this test was enough proof of their innocence, and so the village took Marvy back. So each story has kind of an accompanying image with it. And there's also beneath each story a section called Living Folklore that gives details about approximate dates when the stories took place, as well as locations. For this, as part of the research, we visited Umercote Fort, where Marvy was said to have been kept. And it was just really interesting experiencing that geographical landscape, the heat, the sand, and kind of being up in the fort and looking out at the city. Each story also comes accompanied with a poem, and the poems touch on just different aspects, characters, specific themes, parts that stood out. There's also another image, and this poem is called Necessary Tests. Kind of focuses on that end of that story where Marvy is made to prove her chastity. 1. An elder heats a rod over a fire stoked by shrubs. The village gathers to watch the rod turn from gray to red. The elder beckons and I step forward. I clasp rod with palm burned over cooking fire, release. It falls and hisses on the soil. Skin heals. Umar steps forward too. The elder does not discriminate. Umar grasps the hot rod with hands scraped from clutching his horse's reins. He too comes away unscathed. 2. Do you know how to swim? The elder asks. Shake my head. Good. He beckons me to jump into the river. But I just said I didn't know how to swim. The elder pushes me along. Your chastity will help you float. I frown at the river's edge, hand skimming cold surface. I don't think that's how it works. I jump and look at that. The elder is right. Kamise balloons out in the water. Wet face catches evening chill. A village boy pulls me out. I shiver. Someone, not my husband, brings a blanket. I pick up the hot iron rod to warm my hands. 3. I enter a room filled with shrubs and a wheel. The elder leaves me here, where I cannot emerge until I have turned the shrubs to gold. Only someone chaste could accomplish such a feat. I mutter. Milieu would be a very different village if we could do that, but take a seat in front of a pile of shrubs and set wheel into motion. Noon sun is at its peak. Shrubs shine in gold strands. I show the elder with village as witness. He locks the shrubs away in a room where they dull back to brown again. 4. I could keep going with these miracles that ultimately prove nothing. That was the story and poem of Marvy. The next and last one that I'm going to share is the folklore that surrounds the figure of the Trell, who is a witch-like figure. I grew up hearing a lot of stories about her. She's kind of used as one of those like ghost story cautionary tales. And with this, I was interested in thinking about the way I think in a way similar to actually what Anuja does in her stories, like humanizing, I think, the women that are demonized in so many of the stories. Sorry for calling you out, but that's what I think of, and I think you have a similar figure who appears in one of your stories in Chrysalis. Yeah. The bells creep in. She is a woman, always a woman. Her name, Terrell, sends shivers down your spine. You may know her from Karakura Mountains, city graveyards, crossroads. The chill you feel walking under a tree past Maghrib. You may know her as she haunts empty highways and stretches of coastline at night when the last beach hut turns its lights off. You may know her from your grandmother's tongue as she tells you the story of how she barely escaped. Your grandmother made it back to the city, but her friend did not. When you are pregnant and in labor, you are afraid. If you die right then, you will become her, Chirel. You scream as the baby pushes out between your legs and hope you don't die. You hope, because this is the only thing you can do. The nurse hands you the child you shared your body with for 9 months. All you feel is relief that you are alive. You could die tomorrow and leave the baby behind, but you would not mind. All that matters right now is that you are alive. Once you were driving on National Highway 10 back to Karachi from a day trip in Hub. The music was loud and the windows were down. Perhaps this was your first mistake. You saw her appear in the time it took you to blink. Your father swerved and sped up, and when you turned back, she was gone. You swear you heard the chime of anklets follow you long after you'd crossed the border between Sindh and Balochistan. Sometimes she's hunched over, shedding skin on the sand, spitting words with a black tongue. Other times she's a bride, arms laden with bangles clinking with every step. Sometimes she wears a white shroud. Other times she roams naked. When you're in the kitchen rolling roti, she enters your straying thoughts. When you're drifting to sleep on the charpai when the light is gone, she enters your nightmares. If you fall asleep and don't wake up, you will become her, a witch who haunts her husband, her brother, her father. If someone comes and slits your throat as you sleep, you will become her. Once you were turtle watching and you saw her, just a dark silhouette standing where the Arabian Sea laps on the shore. She wasn't doing anything but standing. Your mother cautioned you not to go near, not to ask the lost figure on Hawke's Bay Beach if she needed help. You couldn't see her face, so you didn't know if she was hunched over or shrouded, or if a tika dangled from her forehead. Her dark hair, sleek, blended into the night. Your only clue, the clinking jewelry, the stew swallowed by the cacophony of waves. When you marry and move into your husband's house, you are afraid. You obey every word your in-laws say because if you don't, they say you will become her. A woman thirsting for revenge, they say. If you yell back when they shout at you, or if you don't satisfy your husband, he says you will become her. You love your husband and don't want to seek revenge on him. You just like to die peacefully. You don't want to drain your youngest brother of blood. You don't want your father to lie in a pool of his own blood with your red nail marks still red across his face. You are a woman and you are awake. Thank you. That's the end of the story. And yeah, just like the perfect yeah, it was at 15 minutes exactly. I'd just like to close by just sharing some words that are not mine that have been in my head all day. One of the journalists in Gaza, Bisan, as many journalists today and yesterday since the ceasefire is lifted, have said the sense of hope has been kind of slowly draining. And a part of what Bisan said is a message, a message to the world. You are not innocent of what is happening to us. You as governments or peoples that support Israel's annihilation of my people, we will not forgive you. We will not forgive you. Humanity will not forgive you. We will not forget. Even if we die, the history will never forget. And I think as Canada's government especially is complicit in this, thinking of that, and a message to friends. Thank you and the supporters around the world. You have been compassionate and very strong. We ask you not to lose hope, even if the world seems completely unfair and your efforts have not yet resulted in a ceasefire. And seeing the actions that a lot of writers have been taken, I think that second part kind of stayed with me. And as we are here with the theme of languishing, we think of what we do when we are kind of weighed down by that languishing. So thank you.
So beautiful. Thank you, Manahal. Okay, our final reader tonight is Stacey Easton. Stacey is a writer, music critic, and visual artist originally from Edmonton, now based right here in Hamilton. They have written on gender, sexuality, and country music for publications including Slate, NPR, Pitchfork, The Atlantic Online, and many others. Their most recent books are Why Tammy Wynette Matters, part of the Music Matters series of books with University of Texas Press, and also Daddy Lessons, out now with Coach House Books. Welcome, Stacey.
Can everybody hear? Okay. Languishing is interesting, and I always thought it related to hunger. And one of the things that one of the questions I continually have, and I think I try to answer in Daddy Lessons, is can one be born in hunger? And I'm thinking there's trans and queer country singer named Deem the Artist, and they have a really beautiful song called Fervent for the Hunger. And there's a line in it that says, I was a kid with a mixed up head, fervent for the hunger. And so the passage that follows, I hope, combines both that fever and that hunger. I'm still waiting for the fever to break. The lighting here is terrible. I tell all my friends that the book is filthy, and you can tell how people know me, because if they know me quite well, they trust when I say it's filthy. And they know me a little bit, they say to me that they're surprised at how filthy it is. So we're all friends here, it is filthy. There was a man in our county a man of much influence who volunteered time to work with young people. Let's call him the farmer. The farmer loved Jesus, and the farmer loved the church, and the farmer had a handful of kids. Even if we called each other brother or sister, he was a daddy. The church is in the basement of the 1970s public library. The washrooms are huge with brash fluorescent lighting. I go in to piss between the first and second meeting. He is in there and angry at his kids for not finishing up or for not behaving in sacrament meeting. The farmer unloops his belt and takes it into his hand, cracking it as a promise and a threat. Scared, I look over to him, and he looks over to me, gives me a sly smile. It's a threat I can't quite determine. I want the father to send his kids home, and in the 5 minutes or so before someone comes in, I want him to bend me over the sink and lash my ass with a leather belt. I want him to make sure to use the buckle. I want his hand made firm with manual labor to guide my ass in such a way that the belt makes maximum impact. I want all of the people to melt away and for him to use that hand to grab my cock. I want to press him entirely bodily into mine, hard on pushing through cheap polyester dress pants. I want him to ask if I am ready to be a good boy. I want him to hiss the phrase, "Have you stopped your nonsense?" I never want to stop my nonsense. Early in high school, we were all supposed to go camping in central Alberta. The farmer, a scout leader, and half a dozen other people, boys and leaders. I spent 5 weeks before that day imagining everything I could do to the farmer. I could sleep next to him, or I could hear him sleep. I could imagine us going swimming, although that would require taking off garments, and I couldn't imagine swimming with the garments off. We could go hiking. I could taste or smell his rank sweat, his thick odor. His kids got sick. We never went camping. We did go swimming with the other boys, with another leader or two. The farmer changed quickly and didn't shower before swiping into the pool. Sherwood Park, out of town, one of these rec centers built as an example of civic pride. We're all playing an aggressive game of water polo, and I want to touch him more than the others. Grabbing, pushing, pulling, not just flesh, but the accidental, on purpose grasp of swimming trunks as well. Later, as we change, he is standing in front of me, and I am unsubtle in my looks, so he moves away to the next bench, shielding his body. I leave quickly, and he holds back. When we get back to the van, he castigates everyone. He stayed longer in the change room because there was a father who needed help with his kids, and we weren't there to help. All I can think about is how much I want the farmer to help me, to teach me, for his hands and his body to make me compliant. Can somebody tell me when I'm at 10? Thank you. I complain about butch things. I don't want to hike and camp or play basketball. All I want to do is hang out with the women off the kitchen, and all I want to do is watch boys play with other boys. We lift weights one day, and he is spotting me, and my head is in front of his crotch, me laying down, him standing, dick dangling in plain gray sweats. He's got a big dick. Later he says, "Every time you complain, but you enjoy yourself anyways." What would have happened if I had pulled down his pants when he was spotting me? What would have happened in that gym, a serious gym, with all those straight boys, all those hockey players and football jocks, all those thick oil-filled workers and third-generation farmers trying to stop away decades of hard labor and replace it with an otter sleek machine sheen? I'm not paranoid enough to think they're coming out for me. I imagine sucking him off, not in the locker room, not in the car back home, but in the middle of that gym. To his surprise, to the surprise of other boys, to the surprise of other men, I imagine him slapping my hand away, violently dislodging it. And I also imagine him getting into it, driving hard and quick, tracing his member against the softness of my soft palate. I imagine him dropping the bar and me almost choking against his warm prick, against the barbell. The farmer was supposed to protect our purity. He wanted me to be a good Mormon and wanted me to be a good man, and he wanted me to make sure that I did the rituals that were required for all of this to happen. He didn't succeed. We went to the temple. The temple was in Cardston, a collection of white marble rectangles done by an acolyte of Frank Lloyd Wright on the crest of a hill closer to the U.S. border than the foothills. Cardston was a cattle town and a cowboy town. The sugar beets in nearby Raymond were controlled, at least in part, by Mormon agribusiness, as was the corn in Tabor, another nearby town. There weren't any bars in Raymond or in Tabor. Small towns in Alberta would have a bar downtown with rooms above it, and if they were big enough for Chinese restaurants attached. Cardston was big enough for a bar and hotel, pious enough for a temple. The founder of the town had 4 wives. He fled the States to protect them. He never touched a drop of liquor, and his letters were too discreet to discuss his desires, aside from wanting to better know about God. We don't know who shared his bed or how they shared his bed. The cowboys or shepherds would come in from the ranches on Saturday nights, and sometimes they would dance. The other churches would have dances too, and sometimes they drank, and the Mormon neighbors didn't drink. So that was a hint of controversy. And sometimes they would go upstairs with a girl. And on Sunday, that was scandal. The farmer and I drove to Cardston after work on Sunday. I had passed a bishop's interview, and I was going to be the proxy for people who had died but communicated their desire to be baptized from beyond the grave. There are a lot more Mormons in southern Alberta, but there are Mormons throughout Alberta. We drove the 5 hours from Sherwood Park, down Highway 2, the church growing larger and larger before us. Mom's family grew up west of that drive, and so we never quite visited them on these trips. If I think I can remember the cities, Nisku, where the airport was, and Leduc, Lacombe, Blackfelds, Red Deer, which I think of as in halfway between Calgary and Edmonton, with gasoline alleys and the giant teapot, and donuts are still my favorite in all of Canada. Forgive me, granddads. Innisfail, where we would have to turn to see my mom's family, which was the difference between temple trips and home trips. For Christmas or Easter, Crossfield with the mural of the Buck Rider 3 stories tall, the tallest public art north of Calgary and south of Edmonton. Airdrie, Calgary, seeping through the landscape now like blood through sheets, like mud sludging and collapsing at the edge of a river. Now everything from Airdrie to Calgary is one town. We skirted Calgary, we missed Okotoks. We stopped just before Nanton. Natural spring water, sparkling water. I still remember an orange soda there, gorgeous and artificial, its own kind of blasphemy, as unnatural as any other desire I might have had. I looked for it later, but the internet has no memory. We stayed with the farmers in town, with the farmers' in-laws. They took me to dinner at a Subway. I sat making small talk with a stranger about my faith, and I didn't know if I believed a word of it. I thought that I would do these actions, and I would be baptized by proxy, and I would be a better Mormon. I'm a very bad Mormon. I'm at 10 minutes? Okay, great. So I'm going to finish the chapter, and I think I'm going to be at 15. Is that okay? Great. The baptisms took place inside a monumental limestone building settled onto a hill. The baptisms had its own separation from the world and the world to come. The baptismal font was in the back of 12 oxen. The room resembled a Byzantine temple. The cathedral high space was interrupted only by a balcony 30 feet up, and above the balcony, deco-style mosaics and frescoes of scenes from the Book of Mormon. A father put his hand up on my back. He dropped me into the water. I rose. He did this again and again. The monitor of the names I was referencing, an insurance agent from the Midwest, a German prince. My sanctity and the baptizer's sanctity matched across this world and into the next. Even if I wasn't sanctified, this act was. What was the point of my own sanctity? Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. So that brings us to the end of our readers tonight. But before we let you go, we have one more special presentation to make, and I'll ask Gary Barwin to come up to say a few words about that.
So it may seem that running a reading series isn't that difficult. I mean, it's a handful of people. They just walk up on stage. There's very limited special effects, but it's actually really complicated. You need to figure out who to invite, who not to invite. You need to have their bios. You need to get funding. You need to find a place. You need to build a community around it, people who come, and also to welcoming the writers and welcoming audience. LitLive has been going for a very long time. It has really built a community, and it's actually quite one thing that we find is that people from who come to read find it a warm and inviting place. It's existed for a long time. The sense of community and the reading series has not languished. See what I did there? And a large part of that is three members who have been who were part of LitLive and have recently retired and left us all to do the work. And we certainly are aware of how profound, how much time that takes, how much knowledge that takes, how many kinks to work out, all of that stuff. Different kinds of kinks, Stacy, but there, no cowboys were harmed in the making of it. Any case, so we have a gift to, and we want to acknowledge three people who have worked for decades on LitLive. So Susan Evans Shaw, Jennifer Tan, and Chris Pinnell. And we have gifts. So if you'd like to come and receive your gift, we just would like to thank you from, I guess, the people of Hamilton who have for decades been part of LitLive, have been coming, and all of the writers and all of the audience. We'd really like to thank you for your tireless volunteer work over so very long. And thank you. Are you going to do? Oh, yeah, let's do a picture quickly, and then we have some final words to send you off into the rainy Hamilton night. Yeah, well, whichever. Well, do I need to come in and take a picture? You can come here. I'm standing here, so okay, so you're telling us. Okay, so wish. Right here, I'll take care. Bye, everybody. Oh, you're in. No languishing. No languishing. At all. Totally languishing. Thank you very much. Well, the gift certificate is for a tattoo.
Okay, so that does conclude our evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back here again in January, the first Sunday of every month. So in January, that will be January 7th, 2024. You can follow us on Facebook or visit our website, litlivereadings.com, to stay up to date. On behalf of the LitLive committee, we wish you happy holidays and good night.